Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to play some games with Tsareena EX. This deck has gotten a few really good tools over the past few sets that I think improve it quite a bit. So first I'm going to go over the list that I played in the games today, and then I'm going to have two what I thought were the most interesting games that I played, and then I'll go over the possible changes, the pros and cons of the deck, and if I think that it has a spot in the current meta at all. First of all, Steenee is a Stage 2 Terra Water Pokemon, 310 hit points, and it has an attack for Grass that says put one of your opponent's Pokemon in play down to 30 HP remaining. And the second attack for Grass does 180, and we heal 30 damage from ourselves and all special conditions. Now, the idea of this deck is to abuse the first attack and try and use it until we have 6 prizes worth of Pokemon on our opponent's side of the board down to 30 HP, and then we can knock them all out at once with the Hisuian Braviary, which has an attack for free that says put 3 damage counters on all of your opponent's Pokemon with damage on it. Or if it's up against a Stage 2 deck, we can put Gravity Mountain in play that lowers all Stage 2 in play by 30 hit points, so we'll lower them the perfect amount to knock them out. Or we could also just throw the Lively Stadium in play that gives every basic 30 more hit points before we attack, and then it's kind of like if our opponent bumps the stadium, they're knocking out their own Pokemon. And if they don't bump it, then we'll bump it at the end of the game when we are ready to win. Now for support, we have, first of all, the Vanilluxe that says our opponent's Pokemon with 40 hit points or less remaining can't attack. Now that's pretty important. It is a distinct difference from Panic Mask that says the Pokemon this card is attached to can't be damaged by Pokemon with 40 hit points or less remaining. So that means that if we have Vanilluxe in play, Sableye can't attack with its damage counter placing, and Roaring Moon or Giratina V-Star can't knock us out with their effects of attacks because they just can't attack at all. Our opponent can't use any mill attacks or any attacks to recover cards or anything. It's super cool, and it's kind of broken. I did not realize that that was what it did for one of the games today. And we also have Pidgeot as kind of our support engine. This deck, as you can see, is kind of combo based, so I threw a 1/1 Pidgeot in there, and if we can get it out, we can get it out, and if we can't, it'll be fine. We can grab the rest of the cards we need with our cards like our Irida, Arven, or Colress. And we also have 2 Iono and an Unfair Stamp for disruption. We have Temple of Sinnoh to deal with Mist Energy, because Mist Energy would stop Tsareena's first attack. We have Gravity Gemstone, which I've been finding is a very important part of this deck. If we stumble at all and fall behind, then Counter Catcher Gemstone can allow for a pretty good comeback. Gravity Gemstone, of course, if it's attached to the active, makes it so both active Pokemon have 1 more retreat cost, so we can use it to gust up a Fezandipiti or a Rotom or something like that and stick it in the active while we use our attack to damage the bench, and then eventually take all of our prizes in 1 turn. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. We're getting really close to 1,000, and it would be greatly appreciated. But that is the deck. Let's get into the games. So this first game here, we are up against a kind of like an ancient box kind of deck. But yeah, they start a Fezandipiti, and I get a pretty solid start with the 2 Bounsweet and an attachment. This is, of course, I just said that's the list I'm playing in both these games, but I didn't have a rescue board originally. I don't remember what I cut for it. It was kind of an inconsequential card, but I cut it because a lot of situations like this were coming up where I need to attach to like a Bounsweet turn 1 so that I can retreat my active into an attacker. But I cut an enhanced hammer because I just didn't find that I need it, and I don't know if Hammer Sinnoh is going to be enough to beat Lugia anyway. But I figured that this Sinnoh would at least be a nice option against like maybe some Snorlax decks or something like that, or just like a random deck playing Mist Energy. Now I get another Poffin, and I put down the Vanillite because I just am thinking this is a regular ancient box deck. I didn't exactly realize the exact wording of Vanilluxe at this point, but yeah, that'll matter in a little bit. I throw down the stadium because I figure my opponent's going to bump it, or this deck plays a lot of stadium outs, so I have pretty good odds to draw a different stadium off of my Iono. So I figured it shouldn't matter. My opponent's not hitting 280 this turn, and I would really like to get these stadiums out of the deck if possible, just, to thin the deck a little bit. My opponent hits for 110, so That is, they are able to now two-shot me with the Koraidon on the bench if I don't get into another stadium. And I thought that I had like really good odds to hit one, but apparently not. That's kind of unfortunate. Now here I am gonna grab another Bounsweet. I don't know if I necessarily should have done that. There's definitely one thing with this deck is bench space. You often really want extra bench spots a good amount of the time. Now there I was like taking so long to figure out exactly what to hit, because with the moon and the active they are able to now switch card it, and I could have put it on Greninja, and Greninja's HP can't be raised by booster capsule, but on the off chances that they do not have a switch card, I'd be able to stop this Roaring Moon from attacking me with Panic Mask or Vanilluxe. But they do bench a Roaring Moon EX, and that is why me not knowing what the Vanilluxe did or says mattered, because I thought it just stopped damage from attacks and not the Pokemon from attacking. So when I see that, I kind of give up on the Vanilluxe plan, which I should not have, because it would have stopped the Roaring Moon from being able to knock me out as well. But they end up knocking me out with this Koraidon. That card's pretty strong. I promote Bounsweet and draw with Fezandipiti just to try and get into some better options, because I'm going to need a Grass Energy and Rare Candy and this guy. But I don't draw the grass, so I can just grab the Tsareena and a Vessel. It would have been nice if I could have grabbed Tsareena and Unfair Stamp. Against decks like this, I would prefer to Unfair Stamp them sooner rather than later, because they go through their deck so fast that at a certain point, Unfair Stamp isn't quite as effective. And I Vessel away the hammer there, because that's kind of useless in this matchup. And Poffin could definitely be useful. This time I put the damage on the Roaring Moon EX, and they immediately Vessel it. I should have thought about that. I should have put it on the Greninja, but I was thinking even if they do Vessel it and they use their attack, they're going to knock themselves out. So I guess that did buy me another turn. Yeah, so it definitely makes sense putting it on there actually. They do bump my stadium this time for a Pokestop. I could probably use that if I wanted to try and hit like Ultra Ball or Candy. I don't know if there's really much that I would care about milling right now, except for exactly the card that I just top decked. So now if I want, I could grab Counter Catcher, or I could start working up into another Tsareena, but I do just grab the Counter Catcher. And now this should be pretty effective. They used a switch cart and their bench is full, so they can't use the Pecharunt. And I would imagine that they only play one switch cart if they do play the Pecharunt EX. I can't remember if we saw it get hit off Pokestop already, but I was kind of like just betting that they did, because that card is just so incredibly good that in any dark deck like this, you would probably want to have access to it. Here I just put the damage back onto the baby Roaring Moon. At this point, I don't really care about stopping them from attacking me. I just want to be able to attack 2 more times with Tsareena, and then once with the Braviary to be able to take 6 prizes in 1 turn. And now that I have successfully bought a turn, I should be able to do that. I could even, and I did get lucky enough to hit the Counter Catcher off of that, so I Counter Catcher up the Fezandipiti, and now I can either do the Roaring Moon or the Greninja. Either or works. I do the Roaring Moon. Now I just need 2 more turns to win the game. So as long as this buys me a turn, I should be good to take 6 prizes at once, as long as when they retreat, they don't knock out my my Rufflet. That'd be kind of rough. But these decks tend to not play all that much Gust, and since this is kind of an obscure deck, people don't really know what some of the cards do, so they might not feel like the Braviary is much of a threat. And if they do end up knocking out my Tsareena, I do have everything I need to take 6 prizes in a turn in the Nest Ball and Forest for the Braviary. at the time of the game, I did forget if the Braviary was in the deck or not. I was just kind of hoping, because I think that is my only win chance, is to do, that. I didn't get the Lively Stadium soon enough, and that is one of the downfalls of it. You need it before you attack at all, and you need it for all the attacks. Now my opponent does knock me out. Like I said, I don't remember if the Braviary is in the deck, so I'm unsure of what to promote. So I do end up just promoting the Bounsweet, because I can retreat it anyway. And draw for turn. I'm gonna Fez first, and I do just draw into the guy, and can take a 6 prize turn now, which is pretty awesome, and probably the first time I've ever actually taken all 6 prizes at once on live, clicking them all at once. So my opponent has started Greninja this game, and I opt to make it so I can get down the 3 Bounsweets. Obviously, because I don't know if this is a deck like Turbo Lost Box, and they're going to be able to Greninja me turn 1, so I want to make sure that I have access to at least one Tsareena after that, and of course I get Pidgeot, because I could get, I could Irida for Candy Tsareena, and then go Candy Pidgeot, get Candy, or no, actually I can't do that because I don't have access to a Grass Energy. So we'll have to figure that out after the top deck and maybe the Pokestop next turn. But we do now see that we're up against a Raging Bolt deck once they bench the Ogerpon and the Squawkabilly. So in my head, this is a pretty solid matchup. If they ever bench lock themselves is kind of my thoughts on it. Because if they bench lock themselves and we can get out Vanilluxe, there is probably not too much that we can do. And this is the game that kind of made me have some second thoughts on how exactly the deck is built, which is why I'm going to talk about that after this game. And my opponent does play a superior energy retrieval. I have not seen many Bolt lists with that. I don't know, it made me assume that they're playing a bunch of Bravery Charms, because usually that is used to kind of cut into the energy retrieval count and kind of buy a 2-for-1 slot. But I don't know, we haven't seen any yet, and they're basically halfway through their deck, but if they know what Tsareena does, they would be holding on to the charms until after I use the attack, and then they could use Bravery Charm and be able to withstand a Braviary attack. Now here I could grab Candy Tsareena, and maybe I should have, but it's kind of the same thing as the last game that I was talking about, where I like to unfair stamp these decks sooner rather than later. My opponent's already halfway through their deck, and if I let them get much further, it's not really going to matter if I stamp them, they're just going to be fine. But I do end up getting punished and drawing into a complete brick of a hand, and now I have to Ultra Ball for the middle evolution and Nest Ball for Rotom, and Rotom gets me basically nothing. So maybe I should, or I almost definitely should have just grabbed the Tsareena and used the attack on the benched Raging Bolt. I got a little bit greedy there. I thought that I had solid odds of drawing into a Candy Tsareena combo, or at least something, but I just drew into completely nothing. And I probably could have spun the Pokestop. I don't think I ever did that. Maybe that would have been smart. There was something I didn't want to mill in the deck though. Oh, the Gemstone. I was thinking the Gemstone was going to be pretty important. And my opponent does end up knocking themselves out. That's kind of what, or that is what I wanted to happen. So that I could have access to one other card. And here I make another pretty sizable mistake, where I promote the Pidgey because I have the Rescue Board in my hand. And I figured that Pidgey would be a better pivot, because once I evolve the baby Vanilluxe, I'm not going to be able to retreat it with the Rescue Board. And I figured if I drew into the combo off of the Fezandipiti, I would want the Rescue Board somewhere else. But in hindsight, I would definitely prefer it on the Vanilluxe, so that I could at any point in the game after I evolve it, just be able to attach and retreat instead of having to preload an energy on it at some point. But after everything's said and done, I Iono and whiff again. My opponent flips heads on a Pokemon catcher, and this is where it becomes pretty apparent to me that they don't know what Tsareena and Vanilluxe do, or they're not very familiar with this deck at the very least, because I would think that they would target down either like the Vanilluxe or the middle evolution guy, or at the very least like bench another Raging Bolt. But I don't think they end up doing that. What did they stretch her for? They stretch her for Fezandipiti, which is interesting, and they just bench lock themselves. Of course, my Stadium is in play, which is kind of making it a bit awkward for them here to knock out my Fezandipiti. They're going to have to burn another energy with the attack, and they do end up needing to do that. And now I finally, after all this time, have everything I need to start attacking. Now, since like I, wasn't playing this deck before a couple days ago, I didn't quite know the matchups obviously yet. And here I think that I should bump this Lively Stadium actually, because I'm able to get the Vanilluxe into play this turn, because I don't need to candy my Tsareena. I can go candy Pidgeot, candy Vanilluxe, and evolve to Tsareena. And if I put this Stadium in play, it would keep them bench locked. So in this exact situation, we definitely don't want the Lively Stadium in play. We have access to the Rufflet and the Braviary, so we don't need to rely on the Stadium to knock them out. And it does give them a play in which they can knock out their own guys and bench a new Raging Bolt and knock out my Tsareena or something. They flip double tails on Pokemon catchers. That's extremely lucky for me. And now they use Greninja and they get into a boss. I almost concede, but they boss the wrong Pokemon. They boss Pidgeot. They just figured they just need to take 2 prizes and they have a bunch of energy in play. Why not knock out Pidgeot? But they didn't read all the cards. They were just worried about the Panic Mask. They figured that was what wouldn't let them knock me out, but it is in fact the Vanilluxe completely stopping them from attacking. So they needed to bring up Rotom and just retreat into their Slitherwing and knock me out and win the game, but they didn't do that. And they're down Palpad, triple Pokemon catcher, and boss. So I'm feeling pretty decent about them not being able to gust again. And here I'm just debating on what I would want with the Pidgeot. I would really like to gemstone some like a Tsareena and stick something in the active, but I don't think that I have any way to get into enough cards to get a new Tsareena and an energy and a gemstone counter catcher. So I end up just grabbing double counter catcher. I'm not really sure what to do, so I burn one of them. And now I am going to put the damage on the Slitherwing. And we just need 2 more attacks. There's 2 ways that this could go. Either next turn, if they pass, I win next turn because I counter catcher the Squawkabilly, attach an energy to my Tsareena, bump the Stadium, and knock out Squawkabilly with the second attack. That is kind of my plan. And I hear my opponent is deciding if, like, because it feels terrible obviously to knock out 2 Pokemon and burn 5 energy, but they do end up doing it. That is completely the correct play. As bad as it feels, that is like the only option. Or they could try and 2-shot me with Ogerpon, but I do of course win next turn if they do that, and that was my plan. But now them knocking out their Pokemon shuts off counter catcher and equals out the game. Here my opponent Sada's down to 1 card in deck, gets the Vessel, and realizes that they are in fact out of energy and they lost the game. If you did make it this far, let me know what you guys think about games like that. I'm always unsure about them. Like, they're a really close call, but my opponent ends up losing because of a misplay. But those are, like, I think the most intense games to play, where you end up being able to make a big comeback at the end of the game and it does also kind of show off the strength of the Vanilluxe and why it is pretty important, I think, to have in the deck. Because I have seen quite a few people, or the list that I've seen, I don't think have been running it anymore. Yeah, after playing Tsareena, I was thinking that this deck is a lot stronger than I originally thought it was. So some possible changes or different ways that I was thinking this deck might be better off being played is, first of all, just having like a Turo or something like that in the deck would be pretty great. The most obvious cut I see for it is the Rescue Board. Not having a tool or any switches or anything like that to get out of the active would be not ideal, but being able to pick up liabilities and make bench spaces might just be better than that. Another change I was thinking is just probably almost ditching the Lively Stadium package, keeping the Gravity Mountain because that is like an immediate effect, but I really don't like how the Lively Stadium can allow your opponent to break like a bench lock that they put on themselves, and it's really nice to be able to abuse when your opponent completely locks themselves out of benching extra Pokemon. But if we cut that stadium, we would have to, of course, add probably an extra Braviary line because that would be the main win condition in any basic deck. Another option that I was thinking about is doing the Tree Stadium over the Unfair Stamp and adding more middle evolutions, because this deck does end up having a lot of stress put on the rare candies with the Pidgeot, the Tsareena, and the Vanilluxe. There is also a third option that is to play it with Frostlass and Munkidori, really just having the Frostlass to damage your own Munkidori to be able to knock out your opponent's Pokemon on your own turn with the ability. And after playing this deck, I was kind of surprised with how strong it actually was, because being able to never be negatively affected by Iono is incredibly powerful. Like Fezandipiti already kind of minimizes the impact of it, but with a deck like this, you can always be drawing 6 cards off of it, and I think that is pretty inherently strong. And just taking 6 prizes in one turn is generally pretty cool. As with any rogue deck, just being able to catch your opponents off guard is always pretty valuable. Now, some of the negatives is I don't think that this deck really will ever beat stronger players that already know what the cards and the plan of the deck is when they play it. So more disruption might be necessary. The Unfair Stamp and 2 Iono is a decent amount of disruption, but like a better player can never bench all their threats at once and just keep benching Pokemon throughout the game, or they target down the Vanillite or whatever it's called before it evolves, or like they don't evolve all their Pokemon at once. They always leave options to get more hit points, like with the Bravery Charm Raging Bolt, they can wait to attach the Bravery Charms to get out of the Vanilluxe range. I don't know, it's kind of unfortunate. There is a lot of potential ways to play around it. I do think that you could probably win a cup with this deck if your locals aren't like a bunch of super strong players and maybe they don't necessarily know what all the cards do. It is a cool deck, and I definitely look forward to seeing its potential in the future. More options will only increase this deck and maybe a certain meta where this deck could be good with like minimal amounts of Turo and decks aren't playing Bravery Charms and stuff like that. Also, another option that might be very nice for the deck list is Thornton to kind of play around the targeting down the baby Vanilluxe play. Let me know what you guys think about this kind of format of video. Like or dislike, comment, and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.